Hey there, and welcome to this fast painting of the Eye of the Deep, who I've been making over the past few episodes you may have seen, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing it being made. And I hate to say a catastrophe, I stood on him earlier and bent his arm, and I broke his on your right at the moment antenna, but it all went back together very well, and I didn't have to make it. It didn't sever it. It just the green stuff tore from me standing on it and bending it because I'm dumb and stupid and wasn't paying attention and kicked the box he was in, and he went flying, and then I didn't see that he'd gone flying, and then I took a step backwards and I stood on him. But it was saved by my flatmates, so because they were like, "What are you doing?" And if they hadn't done that, oh god. Who knows? But either way, getting back to the point. Starting off then, I don't know exactly what colour. Traditionally, beholders are kind of purple and blue, I think. I'll have to just check, but I think I'm going to do this guy bluey purple. A bit of a mix of the two. Introducing some greens in there because it's the bottom of the ocean kind of thing. Keep it on the blacker end of the purpley bluey spectrum and creep into some orangey browns in the claws just to sort of reference crabs and the like. But now he's undercoated, I'm actually really happy with how he's come out. He looks like a real mini. He doesn't just look like a half-assed bodge of a making job that is actually what he is, because, well, actually except his claws. His claws I'm not completely happy with, but even so, he's the first of my beholderkin to be made and to be ready to go. And I do love a beholderkin. I think they're one of the best thing to come out of D&D. I still remember when Spelljammer first came out back in the mid-90s, and they introduced ships full of beholders. It was like, whoa, that's amazing. And I really like them. They're an iconic thing, and I think there's nothing else quite like them. The closest thing I can think of that's similar to them are the robots in what's it called, that thing, Matrix. That's the one, film Matrix. That's the closest thing I can think of. Maybe some squid beasties, but I don't really think I've seen any squid beasties, and I just like them. I think there's something about a floating eyeball with a big toothy maw and a whole load of tentacular eyes, always looking and always ready to do hideous things to you, because that's what a beholder is. But first up then, I'm just going to be blocking in all of the colours that I want, and maybe start introducing some sort of colour fades, or at least contrasting colours adjacent to one another to blend the colours together, so I can see where I'm going to be doing colour blends. Also sort of reddy meaty colours for the fleshy bits, and I just want to get some pinkies colours into the mouth, which I'll then douse with red ink probably, because I just want him to have a a bloody I've been eating you kind of a maw. So I'll get that done and I'll be back in a second. Here you have it then. This is all the base coating done, and once again it looks like a 5-year-old has had an accident and thrown paint pots at the mini, but it's just the base coat. It's just to give the base colours. Some blending has been started, so I blocked in all of the purple, covering all of the scales, and then blocked in the blue for the backs of the antennas. Call them antennas, eye stalks. And I just sort of did a sort of excess blue dry brushed around the back and sort of striping down the back and around, just to start that blend off. Then applying the green to the underside of the eye stalk antenna, and finally applying the brown onto the claws and the flesh into the mouth. So I used the brown for the claws, and I used flesh. All of these are from the heavy opaque range, or game opaque range, sorry, from Vallejo. And last up I just sort of mixed the dregs of colours together to form the skanky grey colour which is in the eyes, and painted the eyes in. And that gives me all of my base colours. So next up I just need to bring all of these together by applying, I'm going to use violet ink for this because of the historical reasons really. Beholders are normally purple or blue as far as I know anyway. You may have come across this, and I have seen different types. Some of my favourite artwork was from Spelljammer, where some of the beholders looked absolutely mad, just sort of like with tufty beards and not even scales or anything, but I think it's because they were fighting wars amongst themselves, and so, ships of beholders, mauling ships of beholders, something you don't want to get in the middle of. But next up on this guy, I'll be doing the purple ink, and I'll apply red ink over the eyes and all of the muscle tissue and in the mouth. That should act as the binding agent as such, starting to bring everything back together again before highlighting and toning. Because this is a fast paint after all, so it's about minimal number of stages to achieve maximum effect. So I'll get that done and I'll be back in a mo. Here we have it then, ink washes are applied. So for the main body, claws and the appendages for his additional eyeballs, stalks, that's the word, got there in the end. I've just applied purple or violet ink wash in this case, the whole thing. This is just to act as a binder and to start blending everything together. And then for the maw and the eyeballs and the flesh around the jaws, I've just applied a red ink wash in order to start making them look sort of muscly, like revealed muscle. I think, as I've said no doubt before many times, purple, blue, these are the colours of beholders. That's what I'm going to go for. But next up I'm just going to be dry brushing and dry brushing a face. So I want the claws to go from kind of orange into the purple of the body, and I'll drag purple from the body into the claws. The muscle, to be honest with you, I might even introduce more deeper tones of red, and then highlight with just a dry brush again, dry brush pink. Maybe even dry brush pink and then re-ink, so that I give a highlight and then increase the redness of the muscle tissue. So I'm going to get all that done and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so here is the orange dry brush onto the claws. This is using heavy orange, so it's got that sort of light white quality, which is also what gives it the opacity. And the violet dry brush, and so I'm starting to dry brush back into the orange, so it's starting to create that blend along the clawed arm there. And it's also starting to blend all of the other colours together, so you've got this sort of purpley, bluey combination. And it's evening out all of the tonality. And you still get to keep some of the colour variations, the greens and blues in the antenna, stalks, whatever. Gives that enough colour variation there for it to seem separate. So now I'm actually going to dry brush the entire miniature in a light violet colour, because I was going to do the muscle separately and do a pink dry brush on that, but I'm thinking if I do this it'll help to bind the whole miniature together, and then I can once again separate the muscle tissue out by putting another red ink wash on anyway, so it'll provide all of my highlights, and it will allow me to start separating out everything even more. So I'm going to get on, I'll do that and I'll be back a second. And also, when I think about it, I'll probably start, maybe mix a bit of white with it and start blocking in the eyes as well. Here you go then, I've done the violet dry brush over everything, and I decided that I did need to introduce the pink around the eyes and the mouth and the muscles in the side of his head for his mouth. This is mostly just because it will start to look a bit too similar for my taste. Keep bashing lights, sorry, they're very close in, just in order to get enough light on so you can actually see properly. I did run the light purple dry brush all the way down over all of the claws, and I think that's just helped to do the sort of final blending process. So not much more to go on him. And the other thing you see is, as I said, I introduced a lot of white in with the light violet, and I watered it down quite well. I thinned the paint out, and I painted in the eyes, and then the big central eye, because it was sort of I was leaving lots of brush mark, which I didn't really want in the eye, so I thinned out the paint and I kind of layered it up, and after the initial painting in the whole thing, I then let it dry a bit and then added more pigment just around the edges, so that you get that kind of fade from the exterior to the interior. And it also means that I've already picked out the area where my pupil's going to be, and that's kind of marked in for me, if you like, already, because that was one of the biggest problems I thought I was going to have, is getting the pupil right. Eyes are not easy to do, especially like a big eye like this where you've just got a bland plain surface, because it comes down to sort of hand painting skills in some respects. Next up then, I'm going to reduce red ink to all of the muscle tissue, maybe chestnut ink actually. Yeah, I think chestnut ink rather than red. I want to get a real rich, sort of bloody, meaty colour, and with the sort of pink and red tones, introducing chestnut to it will go well. I'll reintroduce red ink to the mouth though, so that there's the difference between the muscle tissue and the... If you look inside someone's mouth, it's got a certain quality of colour to it, whereas if you look at muscle tissue, it's very... it's much redder than the interior of your mouth, and it's much... when you look at a piece of beef or what have you, and you look at the colour of it, although actually don't, because unless you get proper meat, your beef's not actually the colour of meat. It's like this weird colour where I don't know, I don't even know what they do to it on average. The other thing I'm going to do is I'll introduce the chestnut ink as well as the muscle tissue to the leading edges of the claws, I think, just so that again there's that extra bit of change there, so the cutting blade, the cutting gripping part of the claws is dissociated from the rest of the claws, and just add that bit of distinction and clarity to the mini. So I'll get that done, I'll be back in a moo. Here's chestnut and red ink supplied then, just so you can see the difference being generated. And just whilst I'm waiting for the red ink to dry in the mouth, the next thing I'll start working on are the eyeballs. And the eyeballs, or the central eyeball I'm going to do, I'm going to use the pupil that I've kind of got marked there as the central pupil, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint using a bright green. I'm just going to paint sort of around the edge of that circle, and a circle above it and a circle below it, and then I will do it as sort of almost like a cat's eye, if you like, where it's kind of got three pupils, one stacked above and below the main pupil. The one above and below will be slightly smaller than the main eye as well, and then I'll sort of dot on some greens and yellows and maybe some blues as well, so there's sort of an iris colour, if you like, fading into the white. And I will probably do the eyes on the end of stalks in a similar way. I do want to keep a kind of washed out white kind of eyes, because it feels right for something that lives in the deep ocean where it would be dark and you tend to see things with large, very pallid eyes. So I don't really want to lose that quality, but I do want to put in some large pupils. So I'll start working on that and I'll get back to you in a second once I've basically got the eyes mocked in. We have then eyes are all sort of mocked in. They're not finished. At the moment the pupil's just in brown. I'll add black into the pupil. I want a sort of gradation between. And this eye here is sort of looking off to one side. Sorry, I find it very hard to get him in shot. Sort of looking off to one side. So yeah, that's I just obviously hate him. I just keep on trying to kill him. So next up, I'm just gonna put all of the teeth back in, do the pupils, and then I'll do any final colouring that I want to do to the eyes. I think I'll introduce a few specks of darker green in around the edge of the brown as well, just to sort of break up the boundary on the brown, but I'll put the pupils, the final marks, the black marks in for the pupils before I do that. But I do think the eye seems to be binding everything together and making it whole. So next time you see him, I think he's going to be, well, as done as he's going to get. You never ever really finish painting. This is one of the golden rules of painting, not necessarily with miniatures, but certainly from flat painting, It's not so much that you ever finish painting something as you get to a point where you decide to stop. So in terms of many of their sort of acceptable levels of stopping to this, we always used to have what we called tabletop ready, which basically meant all the colours were blocked in and you'd done more than just priming. But then you also can step up, and I mean this is like what, one maybe two steps ahead of that, where I've gone in for highlighting and doing a whole load of extra detail work. But really this is the base painting. I think this is where I could say competition standard painters, for want of a better phrase really, but I think this is where they like start painting, if you see what I mean, because you've only just really developed all of the rich basic tones, and now if you really wanted to get serious, I think you'd start sitting down and just painting each scale individually. You'd go mental in order to make something that's really phenomenal, and you'd spend hundreds of hours. I have no idea how long your average competition painter spends on a thing, but I'm willing to bet it's a lot of time. And I suspect also that as they get better, they think of new ways of challenging themselves. So onwards though, and I'll get this in, and next time you see it, it should be complete, and I'll have the basing all done. Here we have it then, one finished Eye of the Deep, and all based up with seaweed. So it looks like he's swimming through the seaweed deep down in the bottom of the ocean. I'll just reach in, I'll just pull him away from the weeds a bit so you can, oopsie, see him a bit more distinctly. So there you go. Not perfect, as ever. I always want things to be better than I do them to. Often no, I find it's some weeks later that I work out how to do them better. I hope you like the basing as well. It's just, I don't know if, depending on the order I release these videos in, it might already be out, but if not, it'll be out soon. The seaweed is, I do scatter seaweed terrain, you can see it in the background there, and so if you watch that video you can see how the seaweed is actually made. It's all shapeable, mouldable, so like for instance, I don't like that that's really like straight, so I'll give it a bit of a kink and another kink, and then I feel like it looks much better. I went for this base because it's an Eye of the Deep. It's meant to be in the bottom of the ocean, and so I decided that I'd really like a bottom of the ocean kind of a base. Also, I quite like that he's coming through the weeds to get you. There's no escaping the eyes of terror, or the terror eyes, or the beholderkin, or whatever it is you want to call them. Horrible eye things. But he's coming to eat you. I even quite like that you can see in his gum line that one of his teeth fell out. And I don't know, I kind of quite like that. It adds an extra little bit of depth to the mini. So I hope you've found this interesting, of some use. Cool mini or not, as ever you decide. And I hope you're making and painting the miniatures that you really want to have, and getting a chance to use them in the games you want to be playing. So thank you for watching, have a good one and take care. Bye bye.